Does it count if I kill them? I suppose not, but it is clear that my researchers are doing their job, unlocking more powerful engines for me. Not only pushing me ever closer to having a Kerbal cross the Karman line and live to come back, but on the Uncrewed front, achieving my first ever orbit in realism overhaul. In simulation mode anyway. And as we work bringing these new vessels to fruition, upgrades on existing crafts allow us to collect even more of that sweet, sweet science. Let's get started. And we are off. Once again with the whole V2 Veronique Aerobee stack. This is pretty much the same rocket you saw do 5,000 kilometers downrange, do 6,000 kilometers downrange, and now we're looking at the last of these downrange milestone contracts, the 7,500 kilometers downrange. Like I said, pretty much the same thing. The engines are all the same. The tanks are all on aluminum stringers, but we did that with the 6,000 kilometer downrange one. The only difference that's been made since that rocket launch you saw last episode is that the avionics packages have been upgraded, and there's two of them. There's the guidance system that's down here, and then there's the science core up here at the top. Both of them have been upgraded, which means that they weigh less, and they are more energy efficient as well. They use up less electricity. In simulation, that's all that was required to make the difference, to make this rocket do what it needed to do. But, now we are doing this in non-simulation mode. We'll have to see what ends up coming out of this. We're getting a nice red glow from our sunrise. Sweet. Okay. As far as the staging goes, it's the same deal as what you've seen in my previous rocket. At 55 kilometers, this is going to spin up, and we're going to be using some hot staging. Set that all up with the previous version of this rocket, so this really shouldn't be anything too new, but we're not going to be seeing anything until we get to an altitude of 55 kilometers. There we go. And stage. Okay. Nicey, nice. Alright, we are now on the Veronique engine, and that is going to run until we are on to the HA10-27 variant of the Aerobee engine on our upper stage. Again, of course, there is the obligatory 50 units of sounding payload aboard all this as well. Okay, so coming up to our next stage separation. There we go. Now on to the Aerobee. We should be cracking 1,000 kilometers in altitude. If I don't, then I'm going to be worried. In fact, in simulation, this made it over 1,200 kilometers in altitude. We'll see how we do. 900 kilometers. There goes 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, ooh, 1,300. Higher than what we did in simulation. That should spell good things for us. All right, we are coming up to the 1,000 kilometer uncrewed altitude record, so we are higher now than we've ever put anything before. Of course, I could get higher still just by going straight up, couldn't I? Anyway, that is that uncrewed altitude record out of the way. I don't know what the next one is. Next one's 2,000. Well, we're not going to be doing that today. Getting a very good view of the northern half of the African continent. This will blow up long before it reaches the ground, though. Oh, we are closing in on our downrange distance. So there we go. So there's our 7,500 kilometers downrange. Excellent. That has been accomplished. We can take a look at our messages here. This is the message for the 1,007 reputation for going 1,000 kilometers in altitude, and then 68 reputation and 324 confidence for the 7,500 kilometers downrange. But with that done, the next contracts available in the early satellite program do require orbit. So I'm going to need to get into something much more capable than these A9 Aerobee stacks. That's going to have to be for a little later, as I have Kenneth Taylor taking off in another newly upgraded vehicle. This is the CF-104, a direct upgrade of the F-104 that you first saw in episode 16. but this plane has had its fuselage upgraded from aluminum to aluminum stringers, and its J57 engine upgraded to the P21 variant, providing a significant increase in thrust. And I figured the upgrades deserved a new paint job as well. The contract here is for it to get to at least 10 kilometers in altitude, right? No, altitude doesn't matter, but to get to at least 625 meters per second and hold that flight, or hold that speed for 5 minutes in level flight. That's going to be the thing, and this should be able to do it. Now, this is also going to be able to collect some science for me. We have a Mach 2 flight science, which you need to get to a speed of over 620 meters per second and an altitude of at least 10 kilometers, so it's not going to click on just yet. And I have collected some of this science. It's been done with various X-planes, but the nice thing about this is this thing should be able to just kind of cruise at that speed, and I'm hoping that we can actually collect a lot of the remaining of this Mach 2 science with all of this. So the first thing, though, is we do need to get ourselves up to that 15-kilometer altitude. That's 600 meters per second there. Again, at 620, we should be starting to collect science, and at 625, we should be satisfying the conditions for the contract, but we still have to do it for 5 minutes. So there's 620. We're collecting science. It's going to have to collect for, let's see that, that's another 12 minutes. So the question becomes, should I go for that? I think I should. I think we should. We'll continue with the 5 minutes here. We got plenty of fuel, but what I'm thinking of doing is just finishing this off, turning around, heading back towards the KSC again. I like that idea. Okay, let's first start by finishing off this contract. 8 seconds. 3 seconds. And there we go. So all that's left for this contract is the land. But I still got over 6.5 minutes left of the Mach 2 science. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around. What's nice about this is this doesn't have to be continuous like this does. So if while turning around I lose some speed, that's okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick save. And I'm going to try just keeping all of the speed the same, the altitude the same, and trying to do a turnaround back at this Mach 2 speed. Now I do have the G-forces moderated to 5G, so we'll just see what happens. So I'm just going to turn this heading. Actually, let's just click on the waypoint. Let's just click on the waypoint and see what it does. My time warp's off? Yep, let's do it. So there it goes. So it's going a Mach 2 turn. It is gone to full thrust, but it's maintaining a nice speed. It's pulling, what's that, a little less than 4 Gs. Kenneth is enjoying it. Alright, can't complain about that. Alright, nice Mach 2 turn there, plane. Leveling off and bringing the throttle back down. Awesome. Okay, our heading is 267, so let's actually put that in for our heading. 267, just in case, because we might end up flying over the KSC. I don't want it to spiral in. Okay, and now we're going to be time warping away the rest of this science. It's under 5 minutes now. Nice. Oh, we've depleted something. Okay, whoa. Take off the time warp. Something is depleted. Okay, we're going to have to fly you again. Alright, I guess there's only so much we can collect. We have used up whatever sample stuff we got. Okay. It works, I guess, in much the same way as the goo does and all that kind of stuff. But we got 5.1 science, so let's bring her home. Now, you may recall that my previous 2 landings with this plane were hardly flawless. Its stall speed is very high, and the engine takes a long time to spool up if you let your speed drop too low. So let's see if I'm getting any better with this plane. Off with the flaps. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! I finally think I have it. Oh, I finally think I got that approach figured out. Oh boy. Okay, that's got me excited. Kenneth is excited too. You can hear him. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, contract is complete. In the previous episode, my U-2 high-altitude jet achieved the 25-kilometer stratospheric research contract, but could not reach the next target of 30 kilometers. Perhaps the same upgrades that were just applied to the F-104 will be able to push the U-2 to the next level. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be the case, as the upgraded J-57 engine, along with the aluminum stringer tanks, still had me falling short. I also tried the more powerful, though heavier J-75 engine, as well as increasing the sizes of the lifting surfaces and stripping down the plane down to its bare bones. All of it was to no avail, so I eventually decided to move on. I did hire another 75 more researchers to unlock tech more quickly, bringing that team up to 500, and soon thereafter I had unlocked basic rocketry. This provided a small collection of engine upgrades and 4 new rocket engines. One was the XLR-25, the next step up from the XLR-11 family of engines that you have been seeing pushing my rocket planes. This immediately got me thinking of a rocket plane that may actually be able to cross the Karman line and go into space. You'll be seeing that plane later this episode, but I was also intrigued by the LR-43 LR-89, an engine that began the American Atlas family of rockets, and the Stentnor booster, a sustainer engine for the British surface-to-air missiles of that era. I was very interested to find out what I could do with these 2 new motors, and the first step was to perform some static fire tests. It took me a while in this game to realize that the rated burn time stat for each engine should really be taken as a minimum. I found the best way to get a feel for how far you can push each engine is to do a static fire test. The engine has an unlimited fuel while attached to the launch clamp, so it doesn't matter if the tank isn't big enough. While it runs, you want to watch the mean time between failures, especially once you pass the rated burn time. I look for when the mean time between failures begins to drop quickly to give me an idea of how much fuel I should have supplying this rocket. Make sure to enable part failures when you simulate this, or else you'll find the runtime numbers will never change. Now armed with this information, it was pretty easy to put together a rocket maximizing the burn from each motor. Unfortunately, that rocket didn't perform much better than the V2 Aerobee stack you saw earlier. But I was having fun, and I wondered how this would perform if I put 5 engines on the first stage rather than just 1. I then increased the size of the tank so that all these engines will burn for the same amount of time as before. There is a lot of thrust. I can't even see the whole rocket. There's the whole rocket. I realized pretty quickly that this was completely impractical. Despite looking ridiculous, this rocket weighed more than 7 times the mass limit of my current launch complex. Moreover, each engine on the main stage has a 75% chance of igniting at launch. If you do the math, you'll find that the chances of all 5 igniting is less than 25%. As well, though not a deal breaker, each engine, including the second stage Stentnor, cannot be reignited nor throttled down. This means that I need to pitch down below the horizon to keep my apoapsis from climbing too high. I didn't bother working out how to do this with McJeb, so as you can see, I'm flying this manually. All that considered, I was rather surprised at the end result. Holy crap! Holy sh**. That is an orbit. But remember what I said, this rocket is completely impractical. I had to move on to make a vessel that may actually have a chance at being the feature vehicle for this episode. But stick a pin in this baby for now. We may not be done with it just yet. There are 2 required contracts remaining to finish off the X-Plane research program. Karman line, requiring me to get an astronaut to an altitude of 100 kilometers, and Hypersonic, requiring me to hold a speed of 2,000 meters per second for 2 minutes. And I'm hoping the newly unlocked XLR-25 engine will be the key to both. Though a little less burn time, this engine represents a significant increase in thrust. So after another static fire test to get a feel for the failure rates and lengthening the tank appropriately, I decided to find out whether it was capable of getting a pilot into space. Now, I still only have the X1 cockpit. With the X2 upgrade applied, this cockpit is only rated for a maximum altitude of 75 kilometers. So even if I reach the Karman line, this will likely kill the pilot. That said, I'm still interested in building and flying this plane. Remember, there is the hypersonic contract too. As well, this can be used to collect more of the high altitude flight science experiment. Unfortunately, once the air thinned out, another problem reared its head. Whoa, 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 we are lost control! That's a little bit too much up. Let's see what it settles into, but... we have lost control. This is definitely a thrust balancing issue that only revealed itself once the aerodynamic control surfaces could no longer correct for it. This was confirmed back in the hangar. Is that straight? There is definitely some upness to that thrust vector. I'm very used to using Kerbal Engineer Redux, which provides a nice thrust torque value, but unfortunately that mod is incompatible with RP-1. After vainly searching McJeb for something similar, I decided to just eyeball it. Though hardly perfect, it was at least good enough to answer the question, how long can a Kerbal survive in near vacuum? Evelyn just lost consciousness due to hypo and she is dead. Okay, so there's your answer to that question. It doesn't take long. After a little more tweaking, I realized that this plane was going to need RCS, so I added 4 modular RCS blocks set to 2-way with the BDB Gemini rotation model applied. I don't know if it matters, but it looks more streamlined. I also switched the propellant to HTP as it provides more thrust. Of course, this required the addition of another small pressurized tank to hold the propellant, the utilization of which I could tweak until I was happy with the amount that I had. This, along with a helpful comment on my Discord, had me realize that the RCS Build Aid mod provided the thrust torque value I was looking for. With all that applied, I could now kill my pilot, but good. Yep, once I unlock the vacuum-rated X-15 cockpit, crossing the Karman line shouldn't be a problem. Oh, and yeah, 2,000 meters per second while under an altitude of 40 kilometers kills the pilot too, so the hypersonic contract is going to have to wait as well. I really want that X-15 cockpit. Regardless, you'll be seeing the inaugural flight of this plane, officially dubbed the X6, later in this video. But let's briefly spend some time with some more familiar vehicles. First up, we have Kenneth, once again in the CF-104, finishing off the Mach 2 flight science that we couldn't quite get done last time. And if you are wondering why it isn't Evelyn taking her turn, it is because she's already been trained for an X1 mission that I'm saving her for. Regardless, Kevin seems to have the science collecting well in hand.
Alright, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and done. So that's it. That's the Mach 2 science all done. Let's reduce our speed here and get ourselves home.
I realized while flying this mission that I never went into mission control to see if there was a follow-up to that 625 meter per second Mach 2 supersonic contract that Kenneth completed last time, and whether this plane was capable of it. I'll have to check that out as soon as Kenneth is safely down on the runway.
Keeping the nose up, that's the key. Whoa, 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 whoa! That was a funny bounce in the runway there.
Somebody's got to clear these rocks off. Anyway, it turns out that indeed there was a follow-up Mach 2 supersonic contract, and that this plane was just capable of pulling it off, so a few weeks later, Kenneth was out there once again, this time with the goal of flying at over 700 meters per second for 5 minutes, but as you've seen this plane too many times already, we'll just cut to the chase.
Okay, 9 seconds to go. 4. And there we go. Okay, and right away I'm going to put this at 200. We're going to just slow down. because that engine was running hot. It was very clear we were right at its limit. The next high supersonic contract required 800 meters per second, so I tried swapping in the more powerful J75 engine, but that speed eluded it as well. Oh my gosh, 780 meters per second, but that slows me down. That's slowing me down. Boom. Okay, we're done. So that grounds this plane for now, but we're not done with familiar vessels just yet. And this is V2 number 5. So this is the identical rocket that formed the main stage of that V2 stack that did all of those, the 5,000, the 6,000, and the 7,500 kilometer downrange contracts. So this is that exact tank, and it is on the A9 engine. These are set for being aluminum stringers. Very, very similar rocket, just doesn't have the stages on top of it, but what it does have is the early film camera, because we're going to be doing some planetary photography with this thing. Unfortunately, it's not going to do anything until it gets to 40 kilometers. Now, I have done all of the available planetary photography, both in high atmosphere and in near space, over the water. And that was done back in episode 14 by this rocket's predecessor, V2 number 4. But because the water photography is all done, we are at a heading of 5 degrees, just shy of due north, in an effort to collect science over the shores, but mostly over the forests. This entire ascent is being handled by my KOS script that I wrote for the V2 number 4 mission, and I'm just using it again here. So hopefully this will collect me a reasonable amount of science, because quite frankly I don't know what else to do with my launch complex until I'm ready to build an orbital rocket. I did test the V2 Aerobee stack going straight up with a small biological payload in an effort to reach high space. It reached an apogee of just over 3,000 kilometers, but that wasn't enough. High space is going to require a more powerful rocket than this. Anyway, the V2 launch did finish off the near space photography over the forest, as well as collecting some science over the shores. And just a quick reminder that all of this science does need to be recovered, but that went without any issues. After recovery, I tried launching southwest in an attempt to get over the jungle biome, but managed only to just barely reach the Yucatan Peninsula. I decided that, for now, launching rockets just wasn't worth it, so I moved all 102 engineers in the launch complex over to the hangar to help push out more planes. This is the X5 rocket plane that I was saving Evelyn for, a plane that made its inaugural flight last episode. Don't worry, I'm not forgetting about the X6, but this plane was already in the integration queue, so I thought I would finish this off first. It was being integrated because the RM1 configuration of the XLR11 engine is not really reusable. If you look at the rated burn time, the first 220 is how much it can do in a single flight, but the second is the total amount of burn time available over multiple flights. And as I used up most of this time in the first mission last episode, this engine needs to be replaced. This is honestly something I didn't notice when I first built the X5. I have since checked, and the new XLR25 on the upcoming X6 has an hour of total burn time before it needs replacing. Another reason why I'll be retiring the X5 after this mission. Anyway, Evelyn in the X5 is here simply to gather more of this high-altitude flight science, and as you've seen many X-planes of late, I'll just cut to the fact that she collected 1.4 science, which now brings me to half of that available science being collected. We'll see in a little bit whether the X6 can do any better, but in the meantime, I hired another 75 researchers, bringing the total now up to 575, but then noticed that satellite-era material science was only a week away from being researched. This one is a biggie. I'll be going over it in more detail next episode, but for now, all you need to know is that I now have access to even lighter materials for building tanks. Armed with that, I built a more sane version of that orbital rocket you saw earlier. A rocket that is more capable and less than half the mass, and, with some helpful advice from a friend on my Discord, I got McJeb to handle the entire ascent and insertion.
Now, the rocket that is eventually integrated may end up being quite different from this one, but I think the scale of it feels right, so I figured it was time to start building a launch complex for it. This complex will take almost 7 months to build. Moreover, the 209 funds per day for construction put my budget into a deficit when I really should be saving money because whatever rocket I eventually build will likely be expensive to tool. So I started doling out the pink slips, starting with firing 110 of my 122 engineers. There's not much integrating going on anyway. But that still wasn't enough, so I also fired 25 of those researchers I just hired. To save a bit more, I dismantled my previous launch complex and, for some quick cash, scrapped a bunch of vessels from the hangar that I figured I would never need again anyway. This all left me with a comfortable surplus. As well, both of my programs are still on the increase in daily funding, so this surplus should only grow as time advances. But all those concerns are going to have to wait for later. Right now, it's time for the inaugural launch of my X6 rocket plane. Now remember, although this plane is fully capable of reaching space, doing so will kill Kenneth here. As such, right now, all we're doing here is we're interested in this high altitude flight. Now let's reduce our throttle here a little bit. I am kind of controlling the throttle, because I don't want to get myself going too fast. I don't want to get myself going too high. But we do need to be over 640 meters per second and above an altitude of 40 kilometers, and then this guy should click on. And I'm just keeping this under some control. It also has RCS on it, which is really going to help when we have almost no air and the aerodynamic surfaces aren't doing anything for us anymore. But right now, this is just going to be about the science. Just don't want to be going any quicker than I need to, though. To be honest, this thing's more rocket now than plane, so I do need the speed just to keep kind of climbing. Okay, let's reduce throttle. I can see my apoapsis getting close to 70 kilometers, and I really don't want it creeping up much above that. 75 kilometers is the cutoff where this thing starts to put our pilot in danger. I do want to kind of keep going up, though. I don't want to start coming down. I want to maximize the amount of time we're collecting this science. So I figure as long as I'm pushing that apoapsis up ahead of me, I'm doing okay. Definitely don't want to see it above 75. And I did start further... Oh, I don't have the waypoint selected. I did start further away from the KSC, though, to be honest, I probably could have started further still. I figure if the engine fails and we ended up... Oh, we're going down now. Okay, so why don't we just cut our engine and call it and just follow this along. Oh, I never did turn on the RCS. Seemed to do okay that time. Let's slow down. We'll put this on, and let's put this at 20 degrees. Let's see if we can come right down. Top of it, set this down 300. We're going to come down pretty steep, but we do need to get ourselves slowing down. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that this series of planes used to have a pair of antennae on the wingtips, but they have been removed for the X6, and that's because in simulation mode they rather like to explode on me. They were just decorative anyway, but it does indicate that bringing these planes back down is becoming increasingly non-trivial. Let's drop this to 25. Come on, you. I think we slowed down enough. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I'm not sure the RCS is doing anything for me. I think we got enough air pressure. Yeah, we're getting a nice slowdown. Nope, nope, nope. This is working well, working well, working well. I did never lock this to the waypoint. Whoa, and does this have a G-force limitation on? It does not. Don't do that to me, plane. Okay, dropping towards the runway. It's a little scarier. A little scary, but I think it's coming out okay. I don't know what this is going to be like. I can actually, I think... No, this is looking good. Looking good. Nice approach here, Kenneth. I like it a lot. In the end, Kenneth only collected a marginal amount more high-altitude flight science than Evelyn did in the X5. But I do think I could have flown this mission better, and this plane has the advantage of getting much more flight time on that engine. And that's a good thing, because until I unlock that suborbital rated cockpit, missions like this are pretty much all I'm going to be capable of. But that unlock is going to have to be for a future episode. In the meantime, I thank you for watching and hope to see you again next time.